Greetings, YouTube. Today I'm going to be reviewing the Wildside Book of Loot. Apologize, it doesn't seem to show up very well on my video camera. This font's a little on the narrow side. By Crossman, a supplement for the Wildside gaming system. Interesting, there's a little blurb in the back that says, a Wildside gaming system supplement for advanced gamers. And it says, then it gives the address of wildsidegame.com. Now, I actually don't own the Wildside gaming system, and I did a little search for it on Amazon, and it is there, and it's on the secondary market. You know, it's where I prefer to buy games. I got this particular supplement for, I think, 50 cents on the Troll and Toad sale that I spoke about not that long ago. Well worth my time. It was originally priced at 20 bucks. Maybe worth 20 bucks. I don't know. It depends on what if you like what I'm about to say about it. What's interesting about the Wildside gaming system itself, the core rules, there were like 4 reviews up there, and one of them was wildly enthusiastically positive, which made me think it was written by someone that may have been in the gaming group that the author ran. 2 of them were from playtesters, and they were decidedly negatives. They were 1s on a scale of 1 to 5. And when the playtesters are saying things like that and pointing out wildly inconsistent, pun intended, rule structures within the mechanics within the game, maybe it really is that bad. Which makes me wonder, is it bad enough for me to add it to my bad RPG collection? I don't know. I'm going to have to think about that a little bit. So fortunately, I can't have the cat in my lap at the moment because I need to be able to move. There we go, sweetie. All right, so what is this? This is a collection of lists of magic items that can be used by a GM to populate his game for the NPCs that the characters encounter, or treasure troves they encounter. And they are broken into categories which are easily understood. For example, things to eat or drink. There you go. Everything within this category is about things that are eaten or drink, eat or drunk, eaten or drunk. Sorry, and I believe these lists are scaled. They go from 1 to 100, so 1 is the lowest and powerful, and then you go up from there. For example, on cookware, dishes, and containers, number 3 is a bread knife that always stays sharp. Useful. I've created things like that in the past. And then we get up to 48, fork that screams at anyone who uses it in the wrong hand. Just somewhat humorous and useful if you're going to have a game where a dinner party is important and where player characters may not actually understand how etiquette functions. I know I have almost no idea how proper etiquette is concerned when it comes to eating a meal with a huge selection of dinnerware and flatware, but that's just me. And then we get down, say, for 99, 17 assorted cast iron pots and pans that won't rust. Very useful if you're going to be using an in-depth world where realistic magic items should exist, and I eat this kind of stuff up, pun intended. And then they have little blurbs in here like adventure seeds, which gives a little boxed piece of text, and that shows you how you might want to use some of the items being described in that page as adventure seed, which is nice. I think that's a nice touch. And then they have, for example, they have one here which is maritime magic. 15, ship's wheel that glows faintly green. At least you can't lose it in the dark. Okay, useful. A little haunting kind of thing going on there. Might freak out players who don't understand why it's glowing green kind of thing. Could keep away people that you don't want playing with the friggin' thing. Things that raise stats. Now this is a whole section, and they use strength, speed, coordination, fortitude, eyesight, intelligence, sense, leadership, and beauty. So you have a number of stats in this that may not be completely applicable to your system of choice, but you just don't use the list that doesn't apply. There you go. For example, under strength, we have potion that have strength for a month. That actually isn't an increase, that's a curse, but there are cursed items in this list as well. And what else do we get? Weapons and armor. Here we go. 89, broadsword, plus 15% with pure black hilt and blade. So it's just a plus 3 sword in D&D terms that has an interesting bit of fluff around it. Under the category of other weapons, we have, here we go, I like the one-line ones. 31, 15 caltrops that each summon horses. So you throw a caltrop in the ground, summons a horse. Somewhat useful. And not necessarily going to be thought of when you see the caltrops. If you don't know the magic items, you throw them on the ground in the wrong place, suddenly you got a bunch of horses. That could be humorous in and of itself. Say if you're in a dungeon. Now you've got a horse stuck in a dungeon. Okay, knives. Section on knives. I'm fond of knives. 18. Knife that heals a creature fully once per month. So it's a really good knife for a ranger to carry. Someone who's out in the back end of nowhere. And, isn't going to be able to get into a healer necessarily at any time soon. Arrows, bolts, and bows. Arrow, +1 / +10% that won't hit elves. Don't quite know what that +1 / +10%, how that breaks down, but it's a +1 arrow that won't hit elves. That's great if, for example, you have an entire quiver of them, your ally is an elf, you can now fire them willy-nilly and not be concerned whatsoever if you have the right kind of abilities or feats or skills to not hit your compatriot. Also very good for if you're elven squads, things like that. 90. Arrow that causes a geyser to fountain up on impact. The arrow is destroyed by the shot. Useful as a distracting tactic, could be useful for putting out fires, could be useful to disrupt spell casting. There are all kinds of useful things that particular arrow could be used for. Then there's a whole section on things for wizards, which isn't really shocking. Here we go. Defective magic items. And under... Give me one-liner in this place. There are no one-liners in this section. Oh, here we go. 20. Goose that lays copper eggs. That's still really a good thing. Copper is a precious metal. If I had a goose that laid copper eggs, I'd be thrilled. Really. You know what copper goes for right now? That would be awesome. I'd be making sure that goose was well cared for and properly fed. I actually don't know how to properly feed a goose. I should probably look that up. Magic for thieves and scoundrels. 31. Tattooing needle that never needs to be inked. I'm not really sure why that's appropriate to thieves and scoundrels. There aren't the only people in the world that get tattoos, but that's a really cool item. And one I did back in 1st edition D&D. I guess I was ahead of the curve. The Ultimate Loot List. Now, this is a 5,000 item list that uses 4 digits to generate a number between 1 and 5,000 of every single thing in this book, plus a number of other random items that they threw in on top of that. So if you need random loot items, here you go. 1332, gold nose ring that raises intelligence by +3 while worn. A little powerful for a D&D game unless it's a high level one, but it's an interesting idea. It's a nose ring that raises intelligence. It is attached to the head. That kind of makes sense. Here we have 1769, protection versus heat. So it's an item, you can think of whatever it was, that offers you protection versus heat. I would make that an environmental heat. So essentially in D&D terms, indoor elements, but it only takes care of the heat end of the spectrum. 3084, small stuffed brown mouse that raises sense by +2 when carried. Kind of related to a familiar. Very effective. 3376, rune that shapeshifts someone into a goat for a day. So one-use item. They have one item in here that I thought was kind of funny. It's a mask that allows you to assume the form of a fox. Cool. All right. But it's written up. It says, mask allows the wearer to assume the form of a fox when worn. Now, I assume the mask becomes part of the fox once you change into the fox. How do you get the mask off? Is it a cursed item? Interesting thing. And, as an aside, back in my first D&D campaign with my most favorite high-level character, Lord Ranger Takan, which is his portrait on my wall, somewhere along the lines where they picked up, the entire group picked up the ability to shape-shift into a rabbit at will. It had no, at the time, essentially it had no stats. Now in 3rd edition or Pathfinder, there are stats for rabbits, but they're pretty much very inefficient. Effective, they're rabbits. But it has all the abilities, the mental and abilities, and the hit points and skills of my 26th level character. not going to be the rabbit you think you're going to find when you're out hunting. I think I actually used that once effectively against a GM. It was quite humorous. 3542. Item that gives skill in farming for a month. So you take this item, it's a one-use item, and grants you the knowledge of farming. Who knows when you could use that? It might be a very effective item under the right circumstances. 4005. 8 protection versus heat ruins. So rune tiles, probably crack them or something. Bingo. You got a protection from heat for an X amount of time. I like single-use items, and frankly, I like the idea of runes and things of the potions. Potions, I think they're kind of trite. They're not all. I mean, the idea of having to drink something and the effects are kind of weird. Why are you drinking this thing to get that effect? And there are people that can't drink. Things that don't eat. For example, runes would be a much better for a warforge than potions were. Even though the game says you can use them, I think single-use items like potions should be allowed to be other single-use items like runes. 4440. Item that gives skill in chakram permanently. I don't skill in chakram, so you take this and suddenly you've got the exotic weapons proficiency chakram. That's interesting. It could, if you'll pardon the pun, throw a wrench into things. So very useful. What's the last one out of curiosity? 5,000. Kitten generator. A silver chalice that generates a live, randomly colored kitten at midnight every night. I hope you can turn it off. So, that's the book, the Wildside Book of Loot. If it's still available on Troll and Toad for the price I paid, get a copy if you run a fantasy game. This is very, very useful. I have no idea if the Wildside game itself is useful. It may be absolute tripe for all I know. And I may have to do a little more research, look up some reviews online and stuff, and decide, is it actually achieved the level to make it into my list of bad role-playing game collection? I don't know. We'll find out. But this book is awesome. You could always use a list of random stuff. It's going to be very useful for a GM to come throw a wrench into things, throw them a curveball. They're not expecting it. It's not going to be the thing, the boring everyday kind of stuff that they're normally seeing, and that's useful. I like mundane magic items. I love them. I think I've got some lists still for some treasure troves. I should probably do a video about that, about some of the treasure troves I created over time. I think I still have them. Yes, I think I do. All right. Regardless, that was a complete aside. I hope that you would find this book useful. I think I will find this book useful, and let's hope that you can turn off the kitten generator.